Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let me show you how you can be sure you can work with your iCloud Drive files even if you're offline. Now, when you use iCloud Drive, your files are all stored on the iCloud Drive servers, but you also can access them on your Mac just like they're there locally on your Mac. However, if you're offline, you may not have access to all of your iCloud Drive files. That's because some of your files are cached locally and others may not be. Depends on how much space you've got on your local drive. For instance, here in this folder, I can see there are two files that have this little icon here. And this shows that while the files appear here to be normal just like the rest, they're actually not cached on my local drive. They're in iCloud Drive on the server. And if I were to try to open one of these files, what would happen is it would automatically download them from the server and open them as normal. If the files aren't very large, you may not even notice the difference. The files would just simply open and wouldn't even seem to take more time than the other files. But these other files are actually cached locally, so they don't need to be downloaded before being opened. How it's decided which files are cached locally and which files are not depends on how recently you've accessed the file. If you haven't accessed the file for a long time, it's offloaded, meaning it looks like it's still there, but the actual contents of the file aren't on your local drive, so it saves space on your drive. Many or perhaps most of your files may be like this. They're files you haven't used in a while, so your Mac's not going to store them locally. It's going to rely on the internet connection being able to download them from iCloud Drive on demand when you need them. And if you're connected to the internet, this works great. You just double click on a file like this one, and it will download, and you could even see it happening right there, and then it opens up. Unless you pay careful attention, you may not have even noticed what was going on. And now if I were to close this, you could see that the indicator is no longer there. That's because it is cached locally because it's a file I just recently accessed. So your Mac's going to be smart about it and say, well, if you just use this file, chances are you may need to use it again soon. I'm going to keep this one cached locally. Meanwhile, in the background, at some point, it may decide another file hasn't been accessed in 30 days or 60 days or however long, and it decides to offload that one, and that gets this little icon here and needs to be downloaded again before you use it. But this brings up the problem of what if you're not connected to the internet? What if you're completely offline? You're traveling, you're out of your home, away from work. Maybe you're completely away from any kind of internet connection, and there's no way to connect to the internet. If you were to open up any one of these files with this indicator here, it wouldn't be able to download it. Let's take a look at what happens if I actually go in here and turn off Wi-Fi. So now I've got no connection to the internet. If I double click it, you can see it gives me an error message. It can't connect to the server. You're not connected to the internet. There's no way for it to get the information in this file. But meanwhile, other files here that have been downloaded that are cached locally, they can be opened as normal. And you can make changes to them. And if you make changes, what would happen is that when you save them, you can see this little cloud icon here saying it hasn't synced yet to the server. But the next time you're connected to the internet again, it will actually do that syncing, and then this icon will in fact go away. You could see it here. And once it updates and syncs with iCloud, this file will lose this icon here like that. And now the changes have been saved to the server. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MACMOST at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You could read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. So how to avoid an important file like maybe this one not being available to you? Well, first, let's check system settings. In system settings, if you go to iCloud and then you click on Drive right there, there's a setting here for optimize Mac storage. If you have this switched off, that tells your Mac to cache all of the files locally. Every file you've got on iCloud Drive will also be present on your Mac and fully cached. This works great to make sure all your files are available all the time, but it only works if you have enough storage space on your local Mac. If, say, you have a terabyte of data in iCloud Drive, but you only have half a terabyte of drive space on your Mac, then that's not going to work. It can't fit a terabyte of data into half a terabyte of space. So you would have to use optimized Mac storage in that case. So if you have it off, then there's no problem. But if you have it on, like most people do, then there is a problem because you do have files like this that may not be available if you're offline. So the first thing you can do is nothing. You can just let iCloud Drive figure out which files you've used recently and have those available locally. Chances are this will fit almost every situation. Imagine you're on an airplane and you need to access a file. It's probably a file you've recently been working with, and therefore it'll be cached locally. So you can just let your Mac do its thing and keep the recent files downloaded and not worry about it. Maybe you will actually run into a situation where you need an older file and don't have it. Hopefully, in that case, there are other things you can work on at that time. But in most cases, for most people, you don't have to do anything. Just let kind of your Mac's algorithm for what is cached and what isn't work on its own to figure out what files you need. But let's say you notice that a file like this isn't cached locally on, say, your MacBook, and you want to make sure it's there when you're traveling. Well, one thing you do is simply open it. Just double click it to open it. And by doing so, it'll download it just like it did this Pages document here. And you've got it. So you don't have to do anything special. You don't have to learn any new commands. Just make sure you open that important file you think you may need if you notice it isn't already cached locally. And it should be there if you need it later today or tomorrow when you're offline. However, there's another thing you can do. If you were to select a file and then control click on it, two-finger click on a trackpad, right click on a mouse to bring up the context menu, there's an option here for download now. That does the same thing as opening it and closing it again, but without actually opening it. It will actually download the file. It will be a good indicator to your Mac that you need this file. It will count it as kind of being accessed recently, and the chances are very good it will remain there for a long time. This could be very useful because you could do it with multiple files. Like, for instance, if you need all of these, maybe even some of these, you can now control click, two-finger click, or right click, and you can download now for all of those. You can even do it for an entire folder. So a folder like this, you want the entire thing, you can go and download now, and it will make sure all of the files in here get downloaded and are available offline. Now you may have noticed another option here, keep downloaded. This is new in macOS Sequoia. And what this does is not only download the file now, but it'll remember that this file is extremely important and should always be kept cached locally. So in cases where you absolutely must have a file no matter what, whether you're online or offline, you want to indicate keep downloaded for a particular file. You can see it indeed downloaded this one here, and it gives this little indicator here showing you've marked this one as it always must be there. And it says kept downloaded. You can go back to the context menu here and see there's a check mark next to it. And if you decide you want to turn it off for that file, you can certainly turn it off there. A few other tips here. Note that in the Finder's list view, you get this little icon here, but you can control click, right click, or two-finger click on the headers here and actually add iCloud status as its own column. So the idea there is that then you can click on it and sort the files here by their status. And in this case, you actually get a cloud here, meaning it's downloaded. You can see if I hover there, the tooltip shows that. But the cloud with the little arrow there says in iCloud, meaning you don't have it cached locally. And for files that are cached locally, if say you've got a really big one, maybe a video or something like that, and you want to clear off space on your local drive, you can select it. And in the context menu, you can choose remove download. So that'll indicate to it that I don't think I need this file anytime soon, so save the space on the drive now. It doesn't make sense to do it for small files, but you can certainly select several files like this, and as long as all of them are cached locally, you will see remove downloads and be able to remove all of them. So if you need to make sure that some files are always available to you, even if you're offline, you can either turn off the optimization for iCloud Drive to have everything available offline, or you can use keep downloaded to make sure a particular file or set of files is available to you. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.